The bright lights of Los Angeles often overshadow the city's darkest truths. On any given night, thousands of people sleep on the streets, invisible to the world. For Snoop Dogg, this was a reality he couldn't ignore. Known for his generosity and connection with his fans, he often donated to charities and spoke out about social issues. But one day, while gazing out at the city skyline from his lavish mansion, a thought struck him. I've helped from a distance, but I've never really understood. That night, Snoop called his team with an idea so unexpected it left them speechless. I want to live on the streets, he said. Not as Snoop Dogg, but as one of them. I need to see what it's really like. His manager hesitated. You're serious? Like, actually sleeping outside? Serious as a heart attack, Snoop replied. If I'm gonna help, I gotta feel it, see it, live it. Within days, his transformation began. Snoop traded his designer clothes for a tattered hoodie, oversized jeans, and scuffed sneakers. His famous braids were tucked under a ragged beanie, and dirt makeup was applied to his face. For the first time in decades, he walked the streets of LA without being recognized. The first night hit harder than he expected. The cold concrete of Skid Row was unforgiving, and the sounds of the city never ceased. Police sirens echoed in the distance, and the occasional shout or laugh from other homeless individuals broke the silence. As Snoop lay on a thin piece of cardboard, he realized how exposed he was. For the first time in years, he felt truly vulnerable. He tried to sleep, but hunger gnawed at his stomach. Earlier that day, he had stood at a busy intersection holding a sign that read, "Hungry and homeless, anything helps." People either ignored him or gave him fleeting glances, as if looking too long would make them uncomfortable. He had managed to gather a few coins, just enough to buy a small sandwich. Man, he muttered to himself, taking a bite. This ain't just about money. This is about dignity. By the second day, Snoop had begun to observe the small community forming around him. Despite their hardships, the homeless individuals he met shared what little they had. One man, Marcus, offered Snoop half of his sandwich. I know it ain't much, Marcus said, but we all gotta eat, right? Snoop was touched. Why you givin' this to me? You ain't got nothin' yourself. Marcus shrugged. We got out here. Ain't nobody else looking out for us. That night, Snoop and Marcus sat by a small fire, sharing stories. Snoop told Marcus he was just a regular guy down on his luck, and Marcus nodded knowingly. We all got stories, man. Some of us just ran out of people who cared enough to listen. On the third day, Snoop ventured into wealthier parts of the city, still dressed in his homeless disguise. He sat outside a cafe, holding his sign and watching as people passed by. A few teenagers laughed at him, pointing and taking pictures. One man in a suit muttered, "Get a job," as he walked past. But not everyone was unkind. A young woman stopped and handed Snoop a coffee and a sandwich. Stay strong, she said with a gentle smile before walking away. That little act right there, Snoop later reflected, meant more than she probably realized. By the fourth day, Snoop had formed a bond with several people living on the streets. They shared their struggles and dreams, and Snoop listened intently. He learned about the systemic issues that kept them trapped in their situations: lack of affordable housing, inaccessible healthcare, and the stigma that followed them everywhere. One woman, Carla, had been a nurse before medical bills from her husband's illness bankrupted them. It's like the world just gave up on us, she said. Once you're out here, it's like you're invisible. Snoop promised himself he wouldn't let her story fade into the background. Y'all ain't invisible, he said. Not to me. The fifth day brought rain, and with it a deep sense of despair. Snoop huddled under an overpass with Marcus and Carla, their thin blankets offering little protection from the cold. His body ached, and hunger gnawed at him once again. For the first time, he thought about quitting. But then he looked at Marcus, who was cracking jokes despite the miserable weather, and Carla, who was comforting a younger woman who had just joined their group. Their resilience inspired him to push through. This ain't just surviving, Snoop thought. This is strength. By the 6th day, Snoop had adjusted to the rhythm of life on the streets. He and Marcus found an unused tarp, which they rigged up as a makeshift shelter. Carla secured some canned goods from a nearby food bank. The small victories felt monumental, and Snoop realized how much he had taken for granted in his own life. That night, as they sat around a fire, Marcus turned to Snoop. "You're different, man. I don't know what it is, but you ain't like the rest of us." Snoop just smiled. "Maybe I just see what others don't." On the final day of his experiment, Snoop revealed his true identity to Marcus, Carla, and the others. At first, they didn't believe him, but when he removed his beanie and showed them the unmistakable braids, their jaws dropped. "I knew there was something about you," Marcus exclaimed. Snoop explained why he had come. "I wanted to see what it's like, to really understand. And now that I've seen it, I can't just walk away." After returning to his life as Snoop Dogg, the rapper wasted no time putting his plan into action. He partnered with local charities to fund shelters, job training programs, and mental health services for the homeless. He personally financed a mobile health clinic to provide free medical care to those living on the streets. But Snoop didn't stop there. He used his platform to share the stories of the people he had met, Marcus, Carla, and countless others, shining a light on the humanity often overlooked in the homeless community. Snoop's week on the streets changed not only his perspective, but also the lives of those he encountered. His actions inspired others to step up, proving that even the smallest gestures of kindness could make a world of difference. As Snoop reflected on the experience, he said, "It ain't about where you're from or what you got. It's about seeing people for who they are. And out there, I saw strength, love, and resilience. That's what we need to lift up." And lift them up he did.